Welcome back everyone to another video. This is part 3 of a 3-part series chronicling my experience with drinking. By now I had successfully completed college, graduated even 6 months early, believe it or not. How I did that, I'm not sure. But I moved to San Francisco. I was working and just trying to figure out real life. I took a little break from drinking because I was the only one out there. A lot of my friends were still in college. So I had a nice little break. I didn't really think anything of it. I just was kind of, like I said, concentrating on getting my bearings, figuring out real life. 6 months later, all my friends graduated, moved to San Francisco, and the partying. Now, I'd like to say that after I graduated, that I was more mature, that I was drinking less, partying less, but that would be a massive lie. To a certain extent, I was partying and drinking even heavier. I was making money, not much, but a lot more than I was in college. There was always something to do in San Francisco, so I was still partying a lot. There was concerts, comedy shows, just going out for no reason like we did in college. But I had money to afford it. I wasn't scraping by to go to the bars or to drink. It just wasn't the case. There's tons of stuff to do in the city every day. So a lot of times we'd be going out during the week, weekends. So much of it was the same, just a different location, different scenery, different environment, but the level of drinking had sustained, if not increased. I still hadn't learned anything from college about how alcohol was affecting my life. A lot of the bad habits that I had in college continued well after I graduated. I was having a great time living in the city, partying all the time, going to shows, hanging out with friends. But I still had this lingering feeling of not being good enough, not living up to my full potential. I was working at a rental car company, and it was going well. I was doing really good, but not as good as I could have been doing. I was winning sales awards, moving up the corporate ladder, doing all the things you're supposed to do after you graduate college, once you get to real life. I still had this thought process that alcohol wasn't an issue, that I could party all weekend long and come into the office Monday morning and just go through the motions and do good, which I did, but it certainly wasn't sustainable. And over time, drinking started to really affect my work life. As I went on, I started to care less. Oftentimes, I'd miss work from partying too much the weekend before, the night before. I'd call in sick. Sometimes I wouldn't even call in sick. We had to work every other Saturday, and it was hit or miss if I showed up on Saturday. A lot of times I'd call in sick, or I wouldn't even call at all. And if I did show up, I'd be pretty hungover, maybe still buzzing from the night before. I remember, we had to give clients rides home at times. There was one instance where I was giving this lady a ride home. I was so hungover, and I was driving her home, and I had to puke out the window while I was driving her home. And she was like patting me on the back, and, it's okay, we've all been there. And I'm just thinking, really? You've driven a customer home puking out the window? She didn't seem to care, and no one ever found out besides the friends or coworkers that I told. It's honestly, it's a shock that I wasn't fired. But a lot of this stuff, they didn't know. The drinking culture, after college is very similar to college. Everyone's out. They graduated, kind of have this sense of like, oh, I did it. I'm out in the world, I'm on my own, paying my own bills, paying my own rent, and you have this sense of that you're invincible. There was no sense of, concentrating on my career, advancing, moving up the corporate ladder. It was simply work, get a paycheck, make it to the weekend, party, and start all over again. My priorities were all based on drinking. Going to concerts, sports games, shows, whatever party was that weekend. It was never, on my career. That was partly because I didn't really enjoy where I worked. It was just a means to a paycheck, a means to have money to party. I was still very much stuck in college party mode, which, looking back, it's to be expected, the way I partied in college and moving out, being on my own. You kind of still in that mindset. So I never really took work seriously. And it showed because, I never really moved up, never really did much. My life was still very much centered around partying. There were other things in life that were going on at the time that contributed to my drinking. At the time, I was in a relationship with a girl I was dating in college, and I was living in San Francisco. She was still in college, and while we were dating, she cheated on me, and that just crushed me. And that was the first time in my life that I recall drinking to numb the pain. She was my first love, and the day she told me, I remember I downed a bottle of vodka to numb the pain. And I had never felt that kind of pain before. I didn't know how to handle it. And so the only way I knew how to handle it was to drink, and I drank a lot. We tried to work it out, but it just made it even worse. I was angry, I was bitter, I was mean. I wanted her to feel the pain that I felt. And it ended not so well. And I was angry for a long time after that. I experienced depression for a long time after that. It wasn't until 10 years later that I was actually able to get over it in my first plant medicine ceremony. And that was the first time I was fully able to release all the pain, anger, resentment that I had built up over the years, because I bottled it all in. I thought I was tough, suppressing all those feelings. I was tougher than those feelings. But really, that came back to bite me. Because it just built up over years and years. After that experience, I struggled a lot with drinking, just numbing the pain, suppressing those feelings. And those feelings of not feeling good enough all kind of crept back up, and I tried to suppress them even further, which made things even worse. That kind of pain, it hits different. That's like the ultimate betrayal. I don't wish that kind of feeling or on anyone. But that's just part of life. Unfortunately, it happens a lot. I'm sure it drives a lot of people to drink. It did for me. But that experience in the plant medicine ceremony helped me get to where I am today. So I can't say it was necessarily a bad experience. It was just something I had to go through to get to where I am today. But now I am happily married to a beautiful woman that I'm madly in love with. And that just goes to show sometimes you have to go through the shit to appreciate the good in life. After living in San Francisco for about 6 years after college, some friends and I decided to start a taxi company. And so I moved to the East Bay, and where I lived there for about 5 or 6 years, which was a very interesting time as well. But the one thing that was good about it is I had a chance to take a break from partying and drinking. The first 2.5 years of starting the company, I worked every day. So I didn't really have an opportunity to go out and drink or party. Ran that for a few years, ended up selling it, and I was planning on moving to Costa Rica. And I ended up coming back to be with my now wife. And I moved to Sacramento in 2018. And as soon as I moved back, started partying again, got back into my old habits. And that's when I really started to realize that I needed to quit. For the first time in my life, I started to have thoughts about how alcohol was affecting my life in a negative way. The hangovers were just getting absurd. My mind was not in a healthy place. And for about 3 years, every time I drank or would go out and party, I'd come home late at night, early in the morning, and, I was just in a negative state of mind. And the next morning, super hungover, and I was constantly telling myself, okay, this is the last weekend I'm drinking. This is the last night that I'm drinking. And it wasn't for a long time. As soon as I started feeling good again, I couldn't wait for the weekend. And this cycle just repeated, week after week after week, month after month, year after year. When the world was shut down, there wasn't anything to do. So the drinking continued, maybe even got heavier. And then actually during COVID, I stopped drinking for about 9 months and started to feel really good. And then after that, I just started up again, and, just weekend after weekend after weekend. And it got harder and harder to drink, to just have a few drinks. The hangovers were 3, 4, 5 days long. And, there were times during that 4-year period where I would go a week without drinking, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then I'd go back. And it was, kind of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of thing. I was making progress, but it was just, it was frustrating that I wasn't able to quit. But eventually, I was able to. And, today I don't have any urges. It's not even like a thought really in my mind as far as like, can I go out? Can I have a drink? Or do I even want to drink? The answer is no. And that's a pretty good feeling. But, it wasn't easy. It takes a lot of persistence, like anything in life. It's not going to happen overnight. It might, but not likely. I always thought it did. That's why I was so hard on myself, and I was super frustrated at times. Looking back at all of this, I did a lot of really stupid things, made a lot of mistakes, made some terrible decisions. But to be perfectly honest, I don't regret any of it. And the reason being is every little bit of my past, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's all part of who I am today. And I'm proud of the person I am and where I'm at in life. I'm not perfect. I'm not even close. I don't even know what that means, to be perfect. Is it even possible to be perfect? I am conscious of where I am and where I'm headed. Every day, my goal is to be better than the person I was yesterday. Even if it's just tiny increments here and there. They add up and they'll compound over time. Looking back now at the person I was 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, it's astonishing, really. So I'm excited to continue this journey without drinking, without alcohol in my life, and to see, where I'm headed. All good things to come. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Please leave any comments in the comments section below. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. As always, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you on the next one.